This is TJ with Tech Made Easy. Welcome to the channel. My channel is all about making things affordable, practical, and easy. And in today's video, we're going to talk about creating a VM or a Proxmox server. And one of the problems, or one of the things that I see on YouTube is a lot of people say, oh, you can use a laptop for a Proxmox server. Well, okay, you can, but you're going to be limited on what kind of programs you run on there. It's great if you want to practice with Proxmox and getting used to it, but if you really want a Proxmox server to run one or more programs, then you really need a beefy Proxmox server. Now, maybe you don't need one as beefy as the one I'm going to show here, but this Proxmox server is $520. It's 32 cores, 64 threads, 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM, ECC RAM. It includes a 2 terabyte, another 500 gigabyte NVMe for the operating system. And I'll go over why I'm using 2 if you're not familiar with Proxmox. You don't have to have 2 hard drives or NVMe's to run Proxmox, but it's just better to have 2, one for the operating system, one for your programs. So the 2 terabyte one is for the programs. And then we're going to have a 10 gigabyte network card as well. Now, the whole thing was with me. I'm just going to back up for a minute here. When I first started getting into computers and I started using Linux as my desktop, I didn't know what a VM was until I started using Linux, to be honest. And then I really saw the use of VMs down the road. I used to run Plex on my commercial server. I don't use that commercial server anymore. It was a little loud. It's one of the quietest commercial servers that you get. But I did replace that recently. I created another server. In fact, you'll see this one right here. I did a video on that one. I created a server because it's quieter. And it's newer as well, and so I have more flexibility in the CPUs. But what I really noticed was that I started realizing the advantage of having a VM or a Proxmox server. And so, like right now, I run my Plex on there. I do my video transcoding on there. I run File Browser and ThinkSync on there. In fact, I might be doing a video on File Browser. I really like it a lot better for home than Nextcloud. Nextcloud has some funky things that can be a little complicated with it. It does the same thing as Nextcloud, but way easier for me to set up and use. And then I do my backups for my Proxmox server as well. And so this Proxmox server will allow you to run, depending on what programs you want to run, what operating systems you want to run, and it's also upgradable. You can go beyond the scope of what I'm going to present here today. So let's go ahead. The computer that I use for my Proxmox server is plugged in. It's working right now. So I'm not going to show that, but I'm going to show it on the screen. I'm going to show you all the advantages of that. It's a Dell T7810. It's a dual processor PC. And so let's go ahead and let's jump into it. Let's look at all the specs and the pricing on everything. I'll have all the links down below where to get everything, all the parts. This is not a build, it's more of a modification. You're going to buy a Dell 7810 and then just modify it. So let's get started. Okay, so this is my $520 Proxmox server or VM server. You don't have to put Proxmox on there. You could even throw Linux on there and just throw a whole bunch of VMs through an NVMe or whatever your favorite VM is that you could use. So this is the Dell 7810. Like I said, it is a dual processor. Now this is the whole thing is that I didn't include any storage drives in this price because it depends on your need. You know, for me, all of my storage, I have TrueNAS storage
like all my videos are on a TrueNAS server, so my Proxmox just accesses the TrueNAS server to run all of my movies from. But maybe you don't have another server, and so I'll talk about those options also as we go along, and how much extra that may cost you if you want to add some storage to this other than the VM storage that you're using for your apps and programs or your operating systems that you may run on here. So let's just go ahead and jump into the pricing here. So this Dell 7810 on eBay, and again, if you've watched my channel before, I buy a lot of stuff from eBay. I've only had, I don't know, out of the hundreds of things I bought from eBay, maybe one or two things that didn't work, but I was able to resolve that with the seller. Most of the time I buy these type of systems from a refurbisher, and not always from an individual trying to sell something. The refurbishers are a lot more responsive. They'll resolve any problems or give you a new one, ship out a new one. So I just prefer to buy from recyclers that get these from businesses. And most of these will come from companies that are rotating out equipment, and so you have these recyclers that will get them, they'll make sure they work, and so on and so forth. So and I'll talk more on the specs on this, but you can get this for $200, and I should maybe put $200 plus depending on so I got mine for like 180 bucks. I got a deal on mine, but I'll show you on eBay that you can get these for $200, but you may have to pay a little bit more depending on if they're, in fact, when I was preparing this, I did find one for $200. It actually came with 2 processors, but it doesn't matter because we're going to replace those. Most of the time these machines will come with a processor that you're not going to use. And so anyway, let's go forward because we're going to talk more about the 7810 here in a minute. So the you can get 64 gigabytes of DDR RAM, and it's server RAM that you have to put in these, which is great. So $60 will get you that 64 gigabytes. And then this one, it's a dual server, so I've got 2 XEON E5 2698s, these 3s on there. They are 16 cores each, so you get 32 cores, and that comes out to be 64 threads. So then I do have this 500 gigabyte NVMe for $25. I have the 2 terabyte for $80 and NVMe. I have the dual NVMe controller. You can boot off of NVMe with the T7810, and so you will need to buy an NVMe controller to do that. And then we've got this doesn't come with a 10 gigabit network card, but you can pick up one from eBay. And not all these things come from eBay. Some come from Amazon. The NVMe drives come from Amazon. And so then you can pick up these network cards all day long from eBay for $50. So that adds up to your 520. So let's just go ahead. So this is the Dell Precision. The T stands for Tower, 7810. And so this is the front of it, obviously, that we were just looking at. This is the inside, the back here. It does have USB 3. It has one USB 3 in the front, the rest are 2s, but then they have more USB 3s in the back. Most of the time when you buy these used, sometimes they'll come with a video card, sometimes they won't, and I'll explain that as well as an option. You may have to buy a video card for it, or if you have an old one, you can throw in here. Because you only need the video card to install Proxmox. You don't need it to run Proxmox once it's installed. But anyway, so this is where your CPUs go right here. Obviously, you have plenty of slots here. This system, I believe, it can take up 256 gigs of RAM. And a lot of times when you go look at these specs, this is built on the X99 platform. When you go look at these specs, sometimes they only say 16 gigs of RAM is the largest RAM you can put in these, but you can put 32. I have 32 in my TrueNAS server is an HP Z440, which is even older than this one, and it takes 32 gigs of RAM. because I have 128 gigs of RAM in that machine. But anyway, so right now we're just doing 64, but you can put in up to 256 gigs of RAM in here if you want. Again, maybe this is going to be more beefier than you want for a Proxmox server, but for me it meets my needs. Or maybe this is going to be just right, or maybe in the future you want to upgrade it. So what I like about this is that it's got its cooling system is really good. And I usually, on my servers, I usually turn the fan speeds up 1 or 2 notches. I want to have really good airflow on my servers. And so now this is the limitation of this machine. You'll notice here that there's only 2 hard drive bays. Technically, if we jump back over here to the left hand side of the screen, there is a bay there for a hard drive or other stuff that you can put there. So technically you can have 3 hard drives in this for storage. But like I said, this particular system, this pricing doesn't include the storage. I just use my Proxmox server to access my file servers. So all my data is stored on a file server. But again, I will talk about options here. And if you need more than 3 hard drives, this does have a bigger brother. And let's just look at that real quick. So you have the T7910. And I put here $300 plus because you're definitely going to spend around $300 for one of these. The reason why this is the big brother, because you can put up to 5 hard drives in here, and you'll notice here that it's wider, and that's because if you look on the right here, you've got 4 hard drive bays for hard drives here, and then you can use the CD-ROM slot for another hard drive. So you have the capability of 5 hard drives if you want your data to be stored along with this system. And I'll talk about pricing on hard drives and how I do my hard drives. So let's just go ahead and so now when I went to do this, I looked on eBay, and this system was available for $199, but then when I went to do the video, they're out of stock. This one did come with 2 XEONs. Now you'll notice here, you could use this one if you wanted to, but the way it comes right now, you could use it if you wanted, but I want more cores, more threads than what this one's offering. And you're not going to get high core counts on these systems when they sell them. A lot of times they sell them bare bone, which I'm fine with that too, because normally I don't really use any of the CPUs that come with these systems. But one of the things I do need to talk about, and I'm going to go back to my previous slide here. You'll notice that, like I said, it is a dual. The reason why I put 200 plus is because sometimes, like right now, that system isn't available for $200. Now they come on eBay all the time, so you have to just check if you want to get a system that's complete with everything in it, like these 2 heat sinks for your CPUs. A lot of times though, a lot of people don't put 2 CPUs in them, or they're bare bone, and they will come with this heat sink right here for 1 CPU. You may end up having to buy the other one, and I will I'll go into that and talk about that. The pricing on that, so it's about $30 for an extra one. So, but like I said, when I bought mine, it came with both of them. You can get them with both of them, but if you can't find one, then you may have to purchase one. And the same thing goes with the 7910 as well. So you know, if you're patient and just keep on looking at eBay, these will come up. There are some right now that are $199. They just don't come with that second fan, and most of the time they're free shipping. And believe me, they go up higher than $200. They can go up to, you know, whatever, the sky's the limit, depending on how they're configured when you're buying them used. But like I said, I always like to I either buy bare bone or now this is one thing, when you buy from eBay, you can contact the seller and see if they have that second heatsink that they could throw in, and they might throw it in for an extra 20 bucks or something. Okay, so the CPU is a XEON. This is a 16 core, like I said. So you're and 32 threads, and you can get these all day long for 32 bucks. And we're putting in 2 of these. That's why the cost is $74 for the CPUs. And again, most of these always come with free shipping, so you don't have to worry about shipping. The thing that will make a difference in the pricing of the system, obviously, is taxes. Taxes are different everywhere. Some states don't even have tax. Some do. Most do, but your tax rates are different. So let's just go RAM here. This is $56, but this one is charging $4 for shipping, so it's $60. And if you need more RAM, you can, or if you need less RAM, then by all means get less RAM. I don't know if this system can run on 1 RAM per CPU. A lot of times they take a pair for each CPU. So if you wanted less, you would still want to maybe get 4, or maybe you're not going to run dual processors. Maybe you're going to hold off and run the single processor. But anyway, so you could spend less money on RAM as well. Again, this is the system that I use personally, and the configuration that I have for my system. So here's a crucial 500 gigabyte NVMe for 25 bucks on Amazon. Again, I'm going to have all these links below. Here's the 2 terabyte one for $79. Now, the reason why also on these systems it's $520, but you can go, obviously you can spend more if you want, and maybe if you want a Samsung instead of Silicon Power, and you could do that. You could spend a little bit more money. We'll talk about that coming up. So let's just go ahead. So what I do here is I like having a dual NVMe in the system. That way I can use one of those as either backup for my programs, or if you're doing a lot of programs, it gives you another option. Obviously on this purchase, we're only purchasing 1 2 terabyte NVMe, but this will give you flexibility to add one in the future, or you can, or we're doing the operating system on the 500 megabyte one. But I'm going to talk about some options here too when you're setting up Proxmox. And this video isn't going to go in on how to set up Proxmox, but I will talk about setting it up, some options. So then we have now you can get these 10 gigabit NIC cards on eBay all day long for $50, sometimes less, and then sometimes you can make an offer. They might take $5 off. They don't take a lot off when you make offer, but you just have to make sure that when you type this in, and again I'll have links below, but sometimes my links won't be good anymore because they're out of stock. That particular vendor's out of stock, but others will have it. But as long as you put in X5400, then now this one's a dual. They're not always all dual, so you don't have to put it in the T2. But if you just put in Intel X, a lot of manufacturers. This happens to be a Dell, but it's using an Intel chipset. So a lot of them use Intel chipsets, and it'll be totally compatible with Proxmox. Okay, you might be wondering why a 10 gigabit network card. Well, when I first installed Proxmox, I was just using the built-in network card. But when you start running a lot of OSs, operating systems, and programs, it really bottlenecks that card. So your built-in NIC really should be for the operating system. The 10 gigabit card is for your VMs. And believe me, it makes a huge difference. My Plex was so much more efficient once I went to the 10 gigabit. Now I do have 10 gigabit networking in my house. If you want to know more about 10 gig networking and how to do it on the cheap, I'll put a link below as well. But even if you don't have 10 gig networking, at least get the card so you have it for the future, and run all of your VMs on a separate network card than the operating system. So okay, so what I have here is these are server options for this server, for this Proxmox server. Me personally, I use an SSD to put the operating system on. Now, it's really kind of odd because SSDs now are becoming more expensive than buying an NVMe, but at the time I did this, it was cheaper than an NVMe. So, but I would suggest, personally, if you want to use that dual controller card for the NVMe, put your operating system on an SSD, and then you have two that you can use. Because once you put in a few things in your system, you don't have a ton of slots left over as well to maybe put in two NVMe controller cards. And so so my Proxmox is on an SSD. Proxmox does not take 250 megabytes or 500 megabytes. What I do with the rest of the drive is that's where I store any of the operating systems that I've downloaded to install. So I store that on what's left over, and it's really, you probably have 200 megabytes that you can store. And on the NVMe, you're going to have 400 megabytes to store your programs. Not run your programs, but when you download an ISO, to store your ISOs on. So if it doesn't come with a video card, you can pick one up for $10. A lot of them come with video cards, but some don't. The one that I have, the one that's out of stock, obviously came with a video card because it also came with two CPUs as well. Now, this is the other thing. So you can, this is what I mean by flexibility. So this CPU here, this is the E5 2699 instead of the E5 2698, and it actually has 18 cores, so 36 threads. So that gives you 36 cores, 72 threads, and it's $94 for two of them, and that's versus your $64. Again, that's if you really need that many. Depending on what apps you're running, you may need that many. You also might need more than that, and so down below here, these do run the V4s as well, and the V4s have more core options than the V3s. The V3s, I think, only go up to 18 cores. The V4s, of course, you're going to pay more for this, go up to 22 cores. And so, anyway, and I just put a price question mark here because it's just going to depend on, if you end up upgrading in the future or you want to start off with V4s, that can change the price, and that depends on which CPU you get. So, and again, a heatsink, and then the CPU heatsink, and then, like I said before, if you need more storage than say 3 hard drives, you can get one of these T7910 systems for $300. The reason why I put plus there is because you may have to buy a heatsink. So now the reason why I have an NVMe here, if you want a Samsung, that'll cost you more, be 106 or something. So that's why I put $100 plus here. It just depends on what brands of NVMe drives you like. But I was trying to keep this as low as possible. I do have Samsung in mind. And then there's the, now if you do want hard drives, depending on the hard drive, I'm just giving you this as an example. So when I do my servers, I always buy used server hard drives. And that may sound scary to you to buy a used hard drive, but these server hard drives are meant to run for hours and hours and hours and hours. And companies, what they do after their servers run for so many hours, they go ahead and recycle those hard drives, and so you can get these hard drives dirt cheap. A 6 gigabyte, and HGST is one of the major server manufacturers out there. So on eBay you can get these for $40 a piece, sometimes $35. That includes shipping and handling. So If you wanted to add storage to it, that is an option. You can get 8 gigabyte ones. Now this is a SATA. These are SATA drives. You have to be careful when you look at these. Make sure that they're not SAS, although you can get SAS adapters to run SAS in these as well. And again, depending on what your needs are, you may want to get, if you plan on having a lot of storage, if you want a lot of storage, then maybe you can go up to the 7910. Everything just costs more. But if you just want a basic, or if you want a nice Proxmox or VM server that can run a lot of programs and apps, this is the way to go. And you're accessing your data from somewhere else. Okay, so so that's basically it for this presentation. Again, I'm running this exact same system as my own Proxmox server, basically with the same setup. The only difference with mine is I have a 1 terabyte NVMe. When I built this system, they were still they're way more cheaper now than when they were when I built the system. And so I wish I would have a 2 terabyte drive though. And so I did not get that double controller when I built mine either. Now I wish I had a double controller so I could add another drive. Although I have purchased that one to add another drive to my Proxmox server. Anyway, this is TJ with Tech Made Easy. I hope that was helpful. If you don't know how to upgrade these parts, I will throw a link in the description below that shows you how to upgrade a PC. And it's not this PC, but once you see how to upgrade one, it's the same on every PC. I assume a lot of people watching this do know how to upgrade your RAM and your CPU and stuff like that, but some may not. Anyway, this is TJ with Tech Made Easy. I hope that was helpful. Have a great day. Thanks.
Now that was easy peasy.